Okay, it's 12:30 and time to begin our special Baxter City Council meeting in regards to some ordinance change-ups. And as the pandemic has caused us to take a second look at. So we'll get going right away. I'll turn it over to the city administrator and kick it off, Brad.
Sure. Before we start, we'll just do a quick roll call and make sure that
Okay.
on record who is in attendance.
Yep.
From that standpoint. Councilmember Cross,
Here.
Councilmember Holman,
Here.
Councilmember Licio,
Here.
Councilmember Tabbitt,
Here.
and Mayor Olson.
Here.
All right. With that, I appreciate everybody having the flexibility in their schedules to meet on short notice. All of you are aware last week the governor announced guidelines for the reopening of restaurants when those establishments are allowed to reopen on Monday, June 1st. The main takeaway from that announcement is the state will allow these establishments to be able to conduct business outdoors only with a maximum seating of 50 persons at one given time. The announcement didn't identify the length in which these new guidelines will be in effect. With the majority of Baxter restaurants not currently having outdoor dining facilities nor the capacity to install permanent facilities, staff has drafted a resolution and supporting documentation that establishes temporary waivers and alterations to our existing regulations that are in effect on restaurants. These changes will allow restaurants to utilize parking lots, grass areas, etc., to provide outdoor dining for their patrons while the governor's guidelines remain in effect. Included in your packet an updated version of the resolution and the support documentation was provided to you earlier this morning. To assure that the temporary use of these areas do not endanger the health and safety of employees, patrons, as well as the general public, we are recommending that businesses be required to submit and obtain a temporary land use application. We are asking you to allow this to be done administratively so that we can minimize the amount of time that a business has to wait to receive approval. These rules and regulations are temporary. We are proposing that this be in effect by until October 31st, or when the governor's peacetime executive order expires. So we're looking at basically one summer of having these temporary regulations to assure that we are working with the businesses in a timely fashion. I did go out to area restaurants and met with them to discuss what they are doing or considering, and opening up dialogue, being proactive and trying to find out how they're addressing these new guidelines that the state has put in place. All of them have been very supportive of the conversation and knowing that we are looking at ways to try and aid them or assist them while they try and maneuver their way through these new established guidelines that they'll have to abide by. So that's it in a quick nutshell. I want to thank the CD staff, and particularly CD Director Doty, as well as Planner Gindley and Building Official Pat Peterson, as well as Assistant Administrator Steele, in regards to helping put this together. We put this together in a very short period of time, tried to come up with as many scenarios as possible. I don't think we could put rules and regulations that address every situation. We know that it's fluid and we will have to make adjustments along the way. But this is a proposed document that is intended to try and minimize, if not move us aside from being an obstacle to having these businesses be open in a timely fashion. So with that, I'll turn it over to back to the mayor or any council member that may have any questions. Mayor, you're on mute.
Council, any questions or comments on what you've been sent and read and had a chance to digest?
Councilmember.
I just want to say I've been through it. I don't see any objections to it. I'm glad we're moving forward to get things open back up, and I think it's as, how do you say, uncumbersome as possible. So yeah, what's my recommendation is move forward.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
I agree, 110%. I had a question. Once everything is back open fully, does that mean then that the outdoor seating areas go away?
Correct. Correct. This is a temporary
Okay,
revision, which is set to expire either October 31st,
or,
which it would be typically the end of an outdoors dining experience in this neck of the woods. But if the governor's order lessens the restrictions and the focus allows for that to go back to the interior dining, indoor dining, then this would be null and void. And we would go back to the existing provisions.
and the temporary structures, are those just like a tent with no sides, just a roof, or what kind?
Correct.
Okay.
Todd?
Your Honor, Counsel, and Brad, I guess the question I have is that, and maybe I'll ask the question. So we're giving kind of this exceptional permission to do seating outside to align as best we can with businesses, to those that can do that, to utilize that space. It's very likely that when they get permission to go back inside, they're probably not going to be able to have the capacity they used to, you know, the seating that they did. And so sometimes the capacity, you know, once they get to go back in, is still 25%. I could see a scenario where the businesses would want to do both, you know, have the reduced capacity inside and still keep the outside capacity, with a hope of kind of getting back close to where their old full capacity used to be. I'm supportive of that, but I worry that if the governor's order allows them back in the business, then they're not allowed to kind of add a reduced. So it seems like, but maybe, can you address that? Is that kind of in between space addressed in this resolution, that it implies that that the outdoor exceptional seating goes away if they have full restored capacity inside versus partial? Does it address that?
Yes. Under consideration number 5, thereafter in the resolution, it says that it will remain, I'll just read it verbatim. This resolution is effective immediately, subject to federal and state laws and orders relative to the permissibility of business operations, and unless terminated earlier by council, shall be in effect through October 31st, 2020, or the expiration of the governor's executive order 20-01. That is the original order, which he identified as a peacetime treaty. It's not 04, which prohibited the restaurants to be open, or the revisions that have been done since. So this is that the governor removes the peacetime order in general. So it encompasses the scenarios that you're referring to, Councilmember Holman.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I think Zach had his hand up.
I just wanted to jump in quick. I had the same kind of question as Connie brought up, that I just wanted to see if we could go a little bit deeper, because the temporary enclosure question, unless I missed the definition of that, are we requiring, or do you expect any kind of specific issues that come up with that? If does somebody have to have a tent or what's our real standard there?
No, enclosure is intended to be defined as a barrier that separates the dining area from the other traditional uses of parking lots, things of that nature. If the restaurant does not have any liquor and is not utilizing the parking spot and in essence putting its dining areas in the grass area or along the sidewalks, they're not having to do any fencing or providing some visual identification of where that dining is. But if they are going to use multiple purpose space, such as a parking lot, we want to make sure that that area is defined so that anybody that is traveling by car can clearly see that that is not to be used for driving purposes, that it is another use other than for parking or for vehicular movement.
So it could be something as simple as a rope and cones.
Correct.
I think that's all the questions I had. I just wanted to confirm if we're kind of just talking about keeping traffic out or if there was more to that standard. So that sounds fine to me.
I just want to provide the clarification that is for use of the parking lot. Then, separately, which is identified as establishments that are serving liquor. Per our liquor ordinance, it does require that that is fenced off so that there's controlled monitoring and access into those dining areas. So that still would be required. Let's just use Boulder Tap House, for example. Had several conversations with them, and they're going to use their sidewalk area underneath their awning or their building awning. Being that they serve liquor outside, they will still have to provide temporary fencing or rope off, something that clearly doesn't allow for an individual to walk beyond or past and out to their vehicle or outside of a controlled area with alcohol.
Daryl and council, Brad, I just wanted to add that in addition to all of the staff that you called out that have really put their shoulder to this really quick amendment or change that led to the resolution. You too, personally, I mean, I know you went from business to business to business, made lots and lots of hours worth of conversation to get to the core, the practicality of how does this touch down on the ground at a restaurant. So I just wanted to thank you for that and recognize you personally in your work. Maybe others are doing that too, but I know you were. And I think that shows in the resolution and hopefully shows in the administration of how we work with the business community going forward.
Agree.
Josh, did you have something to,
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
you just waving at me?
I had an idea, but no, as long as I put my hand up, I just wanted to just add that, I think the comment about if at a later date, the inside spaces open up due to a change in the governor's order, and if they want to keep perhaps a large area in a parking lot as outdoor dining, obviously we would ask to reevaluate the proposal to ensure that it works for both. I think in many scenarios it would, but obviously if they use a big chunk of their parking and then they're get to capacity concerns, or if there's additional safety concerns with having both open, I would just state for the record that just from my view, I think under that scenario, a reevaluation would probably be appropriate. And maybe a very simple, you're good to go, but it may be, you may need to tweak something here or there so that scenario continues to be a successful and safe operation.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
if Josh gets to talk, I want to talk too.
Oh, sure.
Oh, look what I started.
No, we did address kind of to some of the council's questions that if or when we go from outside to inside, if it's 25%, we talked about that early on, and every week we have a Department of Public Safety call in Friday and Monday mornings. This week it was Friday and Tuesday. And it's been addressed at both of those too. The question being what happens when we do take the next step from outdoor to indoor? Can they continue with the outdoor? And the answer hasn't come from the state, surprise, surprise, yet. But we have considered that as we've talked about this plan internally. So I wouldn't anticipate a solid answer from them, but just wanted the council to know that it was at the forefront right from last Thursday when we started talking about this.
Yeah. And again, I would say it's what we were able to come up in a short period of time to address a current situation. We know that it's fluid and it may change tomorrow. It may change 2 weeks from now, and we'll have to make adjustments to it. But in the moment, this is what as we as staff have put together to try and make sure that we are assisting businesses to be, or restaurants to be able to conduct business in a modified manner to comply with the governor's orders at this time.
I've been monitoring what other cities are doing, and in most cases, they're all saying that there should be an expiration date, which I'm glad to see we put in there October. And the reason for that is that you don't necessarily want this to go on indefinitely. To Josh's point, we want to reevaluate. We're allowing parking spaces to be used. We're allowing some traffic flow that might not be ideal. And so if things go back to normal, we want to do maybe a reboot on all of that and take a look at that. And so if October 31st comes and there needs to be more discussion, we can extend it, we can do whatever. But they had all recommended you needed to have a cutoff date so that you could, reevaluate and get things back to where you might be more comfortable with. And so I think that's good. Nothing to say that we can't take a second look at it. To your point, Zach, too, I had the question about what enclosure meant. And Brad assured me that we're talking a fence. We're not talking a deck or a porch, because to me, if I had an enclosure to my house, it's, it's something substantial. And so we are talking fences there, I guess. Let's see.
Just an FYI, my cursor is frozen, so I can't unmute myself. So I'll just try to be very silent while I'm waiting.
Okay. Try to hold down the snoring there, if you will. The other questions I had of Brad was in every area of these documents, it talks about with staff approval and looking at them. And so my question was, how long? And I've been kind of assured that the goal is to keep this thing moving. Brad is and Josh too. They've already done a lot of preliminary dealing with these people. It's my understanding there's even some preliminary sketch plans that are already in. People are thinking about this. And so it should expedite and take care of itself. And it sounds like they've got a really good plan for that. That's always a concern, is how long. That'll be the question asked, but they've done a good job, I think, of, I just want to also, for what it's worth, I know that, as council members, we have priorities we'd like to see staff working on. I hope that we pause and realize how these people have been taken off track with all the stuff that's come up. And so their life's changed just like everybody else's. And all of a sudden they've got a different set of priorities that they're dealing with. And so hopefully this will settle down. We'll get back to normal, but I think patience, I think, would go a long ways on our part too. So just add that. I also want to thank Brad for going out and making those initial contacts, and then Josh jumping in and his staff too. Kelly, you people have done a lot of the groundwork. It's a tremendous PR move to be on the front end of this instead of at the tail end, and I think it will be appreciated too. So I think that I got all my questions answered this morning, so I think I'm good too. Anybody got anything else?
Well, just one more thing. I just want to make sure that it's fully disclosed is a restaurant obtaining approval from the city does not mean that they have the right to open. They are still subject to get their licensure is with the state of Minnesota, the Minnesota Department of Health, in order to operate the restaurant. Those businesses are still required to work with their inspector to make sure that their outdoor seating plans are approved from their inspector level so that they can conduct business. Then again, this is just a measure, local measure to make sure that these businesses are compliant with local rules and regulations.
Okay, one last go. Anybody else? Well, again, thanks to everybody on the staff side for what you've done, and thanks council to all be here today. And I think it helps to show that we are concerned and we do want to move things ahead. So seeing nothing else, I'd look for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mark,
Second,
second by, who was that?
Zach.
Connie? Okay. Have a motion and a second. Roll call?
Cross,
Aye.
Holman,
Yes.
Licio,
Yes.
Abbott,
Yes.
and Olson.
Yes. If there's nothing else, Brad, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mark.
Second.
Okay, and we got a second. All in favor, roll call?
Cross,
Aye.
Holman,
Yes.
Licio,
Yes.
Abbott,
Yes.
and Olson.
Yes. And with that, we close. Have a good day, and thanks for joining.